Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back to our fun jungle adventure. I wonder what's going to happen to Florida and Madison in chapter 33. Let's find out, shall we? The time had come for our first big competition. Wolf Adams called it Amazon Delicacies and Delights. Who here is hungry after a long, hard day yesterday? He asked us. Everyone's hand shot up, except for Victor's, until his mother kicked him hard in the shin. I was so hungry that my stomach growled, but I wasn't looking forward to hearing the menu. I knew what they made people eat on this show. Now that you've settled into your home away from home, it's time for breakfast, Wolf said to the camera. But his message was meant for us. I do hope you're about to serve us a great big platter of bacon and eggs. Florida smiled her 1,000-watt movie star smile. Maybe she thought she'd be able to flirt her way to a decent breakfast. Bacon and eggs. I could tell he was amused. No, Florida, we've got something entirely different in mind. Then he turned and talked to the camera. The Amazon abounds with food if you have the tools to fish and a keen eye for all the exotic fruits that grow here. So today's breakfast will be fish that you catch from the river and fruit that you pick from the aguaje palm tree. The team that returns first will earn a reward, an ice-cold, 2-foot-high hot fudge sundae. Fish and fruit for breakfast? That sounded great to me. And the sundae sounded amazing. The air was already thick and warm. Judging by everyone else's expressions, it looked like the other contestants were excited too. Before he sent us off on our mission, Wolf Adams showed us a sample of an aguaje fruit. It was small, brown and scaly, about the size of a tangerine. Aguajes grow everywhere in the rainforest. The trick will be finding a tree that is short enough so you can reach the fruit. It was so delicious that in the towns and cities across Peru, they make its juice into popsicles. Women swear that it makes them more beautiful. Florida liked that part. A grin spread across her face, but I knew there had to be a catch. There always was. But here's the catch. See? In order to fish, you'll need a fishing pole and a hook. We have that here for you. He held up a hooked fishing line strung to a long, skinny pole. And we even have bait. He opened his hand. On his palm wriggled a half-dozen light brown, fat, wormy things, each about the size of my thumb. But you're going to have to earn it. Each one of you will have to eat 6 of these living, squirming Surrey grubs in order to earn 6 more that you'll use for bait to catch your fish. Everybody groaned. Even the camera guys made a face of disgust. Only Wolf Adams smiled. Of course he did. He didn't have to eat them. I glanced at Florida. She looked like she was going to puke. It was a lot to have to put up with just to try to win a hot fudge sundae. We drew straws. The blue team went first. Cameron scrunched up her nose and popped all 6 of those fat, wriggling creatures into her mouth at once. Her cheeks ballooned out like a pufferfish as she smashed them with her molars. When it was Victor's turn, he refused to open his mouth. Then Carmen whispered something in his ear. Maybe she told him she'd crush his Game Boy. Victor said, "Whatever." But he ate them, one by one, inspecting each wriggling grub closely before popping it in his mouth and gagging it down. When he was done, he coughed so hard I thought maybe one was stuck in his throat. But they earned their 6 grubs for bait and their fishing gear. It was our turn first. Florida nudged me to go first. Wolf Adams put the 6 fat, wriggling grubs in my hand, and I stared down at them. I'd never eaten anything alive before. The thought was so disgusting that I worried I couldn't do it. Then I noticed Jenna watching me. A smirk spread across her face. I couldn't chicken out and give her the satisfaction of seeing me fail. I took a deep breath, popped one in my mouth, and chomped down hard. It squished. It was crunchy on the outside and super gooey on the inside. But here's the weird thing. The idea of eating grubs turned out to be worse than the taste. They reminded me of oysters, and I happen to like oysters. You might think it's strange that a kid who's only 11 likes oysters, but my mom and I used to harvest them on the beach. Then we would eat them for dinner. So I pretended I was eating oysters. One by one, I polished them off. Not so bad, I shrugged. Jenna made a face at me. Then it was Florida's turn. Maybe because she had her eye on all that money, or maybe because she knew that she was on television, she pretended to be excited. "I'm ready, Wolf." She smiled and stuck out her hand. He piled the grubs on her flattened palm. She studied them for a split second. "Say goodnight, boys. You're about to become gourmet appetizers." Then one by one, she ate them like they were candy. Scrumptious. Even better than bacon and eggs." She licked her lips as if she relished every bit of salty goo. Wolf Adams looked shocked. "Cut!" yelled the director through his gauzy net. The cameras shut off. "Well, that is a surprise, Florida," said Wolf Adams. "We'll have to shoot that again. Only this time, pretend you can't stand them. Let's see you act like they're the worst things you've ever eaten in your life." "They are the worst things I've ever eaten in my life. And if you think I'm going to stick 6 more of those slimy, disgusting creatures down my throat, you've got another think coming, mister. I'm on a mission to win that money, and I'm playing my cards the way I see fit." Wow. My grandmother had turned out to be a great actress. Since there was no arguing with Florida, they gave up and awarded us our fishing pole and bait. It was Pink Team's turn. Jenna narrowed her eyes at me. She turned to the camera with a big fake smile and volunteered to go first. It was obvious she wanted to show me up. "These look so delicious, almost as good as an ice cream sundae." The whole time she chewed, she kept saying, "Yum, yummy, It was as if she were copying Florida, but her face told a different story. You could see she hated it 100%. Her dad downed them all fast. Let's just say I wouldn't order them in a 5-star restaurant. When it was the green team's turn, I wasn't surprised that both Noah and his dad Kevin ate them without a complaint. "Not the best breakfast I've had, but not the worst," said Kevin. "Not too bad. Tastes like oysters," said Noah. I sure could relate to that kid. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of liking Noah. What do you think? I wonder if Madison might make a friend on her jungle adventure. Wouldn't that be great? Seems possible. Just said she could relate to that kid. Let's find out and keep on reading chapter 34. Competition number 1 was officially on. Florida and I took off on our search for aguajes. I was determined to fill up our backpack with both fruit and fish and then be the first team to make it back to camp. I really wanted to win that Sunday. It turned out there were gazillions of aguaje trees in the rainforest. In case you didn't know, this is how you pronounce it. Aguaje. And Wolf Adams wasn't joking about them being tall. The giant palm trees stretched at least 100 feet into the sky. There was no way we could climb to the top to pick the fruit. I wished I'd had Rosalie Claire's magic pouch. Inside, I'd probably find it jam-packed with those scaly fruits. Where were we going to find fruit low enough to the ground that we could pick? Then I remembered. When we were lost and trying to find our way to camp, there was a tree that looked just like an aguaje, but it was a whole lot shorter. Florida and I retraced our steps from the day before, hiking the trail I'd cleared with the machete. We finally came to an opening, and there was the tree. It wasn't much taller than a house, and it was dripping with long clusters of fruit that nearly touched the ground. Aguajes! The camera guy videotaped us filling our backpack with fruit. We were one step closer to ice cream. It was time to go fishing. The camera guy followed us to the spot on the river where we'd tied up our boat. It looked like a good enough place to fish. Not that I'm an expert or anything, but it was hard to miss the scads of fish swimming back and forth beneath the water's surface. We settled onto the bank in the shade. Dozens of turtles skittered out of our way, splashing into the river. I pulled out our fishing gear. Our cameraman excused himself and promised he'd be right back. He said he'd used his last video cassette and needed to grab another one. I was relieved. For at least a little while, we wouldn't have a camera recording our every move. The surrey grub wiggled and squirmed as I carefully threaded it through the hook, just the way Rosalie Claire had taught me. Honey, I'm sure glad you know how to do that. The only fish I know how to catch are the breaded fish sticks in the frozen food section at the Sure Save. Glad you won't need my help on this one. I told her I could handle it. Florida got busy swatting bugs from her arms and legs while I cast the line into the water and waited for a bite. I waited and waited and waited. Dozens of fish, great big ones. I could see them. Over and over they bumped into my line, but not a single one took the bait. Then it came to me. Rosalie Claire had said to use yellow feathers for sunny weather and red feathers when it's cloudy. With all the shade on the bank of the river, I needed a red feather to make a fly that would attract the fish. I'll be right back, I told Florida. I need to find something. Try to hurry, honey. These jungle sounds give me the willies. Don't worry, it's only a howler monkey and a bunch of yakety parrots. Parrots. That was it. I'd follow the squawking of the parrots. I picked my way upriver over fallen logs, tangled brush, and damp leaves. After a while, I decided it would be easier to walk in the water. I moved down to the shallows of the riverbank and kept on. My shoes sloshed and the water felt cool squishing through my toes in the hot jungle. The parrot's racket grew louder. I rounded the bend and spotted them, an enormous flock of parrots high in the trees, and I was in luck. They were bright red, yellow, and blue. Now I needed to find a feather on the ground. I poked around in the underbrush. It didn't take long to find a ruby red feather. I slid it into my pocket. Then I heard something horrifying. Someone was screaming in pain. It was Victor. And even louder than Victor's howls were Carmen's shrieks. "Oh, mi Dios, Victor, why on earth would you stick your finger in a piranha's mouth?" Piranha? The human-attacking fish? Here in the Amazon River? When we were in second grade, Violet and I watched them swim in a tank in the Seattle Aquarium. They swooshed right up to the glass, baring their vicious teeth, and looked like they wanted to chomp off our noses. It sent us running straight to the exit signs. On the way back to our fishing spot, I avoided walking in the water. The last thing I wanted was to be picked to the bone by a school of deadly piranhas. Wow, seems like Madison got a little bit lucky on that one. She could have been bit by those piranhas wading in the water like that. You know, I actually thought of that. Did you? Did you know that there were piranhas in the Amazon River? Scary. Chapter 35. Back at the fishing spot, Florida looked jittery as she swatted away dragonflies. I didn't tell her about the piranhas. It would only upset her. "Thank goodness you weren't carried off by those nasty monkeys or attacked by wicked parrots or devoured by bloodthirsty piranhas," I thought. "I'm okay," I said, "for now." I sat on the riverbank, plucked 3 long strands of hair from my head, and braided them together to fashion a piece of string. I used the hair string to tie the red feather just above the hook. Then I slid another piece of grub bait onto the sharp curved tip and cast the line into the water. The good news, the red feather worked its magic. In 5 seconds flat, I felt a bite. The bad news? At the end of the line was a 14-inch piranha fish, its razor-sharp teeth clamped hard to the hook. "Well, aren't you a wonder? It's $1 million fishy." At least my grandmother seemed proud of me. That was a plus. But I still had the problem of getting the piranha off the hook. I kept thinking about Victor, so I decided to let the fish dangle on the end of the line until it gave its final breath. It flopped on the hook with its mouth gaping open, showing off white, jagged teeth. My, oh my, would you look at those chompers? If they aren't just like pointed thorns on a rose bush. "Let's catch some more." Florida handed me a grub. I think we only need to catch 1. No way did I want to chance catching another killer fish. As soon as this one died, I wanted to head straight back to camp. I was pretty sure we had a good chance of winning that Sunday. "How in the world do you know so much about fishing, honey? Is that something else Angela taught you?" I wished my mom had taught me how to fish, but learning from Rosalie Claire was the next best thing. I thought about telling Florida the truth. After coming face to face with a real live piranha, nothing could ever seem as scary, especially the truth. Actually, Rosalie Claire taught me how to fish. She also taught my mom. My grandmother's face loomed redder than a radish. "I have made my feelings about that woman very clear. She is a nutcase, and just as peculiar now as she was back in high school." "What do you mean?" "Her nose was always buried in some strange book. She didn't give half a hoot about doing anything that normal girls are supposed to do. Never wore a spot of makeup or a splash of perfume." Reading books? No makeup? No perfume? Those seemed like reasonable choices to me. "Are you sure that's really it?" I asked, knowing there must be a deeper reason. We sat with silence hanging between us until Florida finally spoke. Her voice was quavery and filled to the brim with sadness. "Maybe that's not it. Maybe the real reason is because she and her grandma Daisy tried to steal your mother from me. When Angela was young, she would come up with every excuse under the sun to run next doors. Sometimes I think those two women conspired to bewitch your mother into liking their company more than mine. She did like them, Florida, but you were still her mom. Kids love their moms, I said. I suppose so, but the truth is, I wasn't a very good one. Florida sighed and stared off at nothing in particular. I sometimes think I just wasn't cut out to be a mother. Heck, I couldn't bake a batch of cookies to save my life. Being a mom isn't about baking cookies. Maybe not, but I was never good at any of it. Your mother and I bumped heads from the minute she was born. Anything I asked her to do, she'd turn around and do the opposite. She refused to spend time with the right girls. She hardly ever dated boys I approved of. I swear, she always had a mind of her own. Everyone has a mind of their own, or at least they should. That's what my mom always said. Florida got all choked up. Deep down, maybe I've always known it wasn't really Rosalie, Claire, and Daisy who stole her away. It was me who let her go. Tears spilled down my grandmother's cheeks. Then it hit me. Maybe all that sadness was why she bought so much from the TV. It made her feel happy, if only for a little while. Then she really started to cry. Big, gasping sobs. I never had a chance to tell your mother how sorry I was. And now it's too late. My grandmother's sobs reminded me of all those times I'd cried after my mom died. Florida was finally, really, and truly missing her. Look at me, she finally said as she wiped away her tears. I'm a mess, and I haven't touched up my makeup in 24 hours. You're prettier this way, I told her. And it was true. She didn't have on a spot of makeup, and she might have looked a little older, but she looked a lot more beautiful. Thanks, honey. And you know what? I may have loused up things with your mother, but she did a decent job of raising you. Maybe I should be grateful she had Daisy and Rosalie Claire. You and your mother turned out all right. No thanks to me. She draped her arm over my shoulder. It was the closest I'd ever felt to Florida. The piranha I'd caught had finally given up the fight. Just like Rosalie Claire had taught me, I took one hand and grabbed the fish under its gills, then used the other hand to guide out the hook. We wrapped up our dead piranha in leaves the size of elephant's ears and slipped it into the backpack. Florida and I headed up the trail toward camp. There was something that gnawed at me. Florida, did you ever know my dad? Danny? He was the only boy I approved of, at first anyway. He and Angela went to Hot Springs High together. After graduation, she moved to San Francisco for college. Danny went to visit, and they got married, but they didn't invite Jack and me to the wedding. At the time, your mother and I weren't exactly on speaking terms. Do you know what happened to him? I haven't a clue. When you were a baby, your father just took off. He slipped a goodbye note under her door and was never heard from again. Didn't even contact his folks. Do they live near you? It occurred to me that I might have a whole other set of grandparents living close by. No, they moved away years ago. I have no idea where they went. I sure wish I knew why he left. Florida shrugged. Who knows? I always thought he got into some nasty trouble. Maybe even died. Wish I had a better answer. I'd always known my father's name, but that was all. My mother had never wanted to talk about him. It made her too upset, she'd said. Now, at least, I'd known he'd also grown up in TRC. Perhaps even fished from the same pond where I caught my first trout. And maybe he'd even held my mom's hand as they walked down Main Street. But is it possible he's still alive? I asked. Possible, but I doubt it. I mean, who drops off the face of the earth like that? I guess she was right. I just wished I knew for sure. But my mom always said that some things are meant to remain a mystery. And maybe this was one of them. As Florida and I made our way around twisting vines and fallen logs, we came upon a curtain of multicolored butterflies. There must have been at least 1,000 of them, dancing back and forth in streams of sunlight. As we wove our way through the kaleidoscope of colors, dozens of butterflies fluttered and landed gently on our shoulders. Come on, honey. Let's go collect that sundae. We sure do deserve it. And Florida reached out to take my hand. Wow, that was an important chapter. Well, I thought Noah was going to end up being Madison's new jungle friend, but it looks like she might have made an even more important friend, Florida. Chapter 36. You made it back faster than I thought. It was the camera guy walking toward us on the path to our camp. Fast? Really? He'd been gone for over an hour. I thought it was peculiar that he looked so surprised. Catch anything? He asked. Yup, I said. Let's plan on staging another fishing expedition so I can grab some shots. We need them for the show. Go fishing for another piranha? Not in a gazillion years. It turned out we weren't the first ones who'd returned to camp with our fish and fruit. Guess who was? If you guessed Jenna and her dad Rob, you are unfortunately, absolutely, 100% right. They had a tower of aguajes, twice as high as ours, and a giant catfish. Look who didn't win the sundae, Jenna taunted. Bet you're mad. Mad? Not exactly, but I was disappointed. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing that, so I only shrugged. I had begun to build a fire to cook our fish when the two other teams straggled in. Victor's piranha-bitten finger was wrapped up tight in a fat white bandage. Both of the other teams had also caught fish, but they hadn't managed to find any low-hanging aguaje fruit. That made Jenna snicker. What's so funny? I asked. Guess the other teams weren't smart enough to find the only short aguaje tree around here. How in the heck did she know there was only one? Since we had so many aguajes, I decided to share them with the green and blue teams. As long as you keep enough for me, I'm dying to experience their legendary powers of beautification, said Florida. Carmen's eyes narrowed into slits when I handed her a small pile. Why are you giving us these? That's not how the game is played. That's how I play it, I told her. We have more than we can eat. Hope they taste better than the grubs, said Victor. Thanks. You're welcome, I said. Wow. It was the first time I'd heard Victor say anything other than, whatever. I gave Noah and Kevin a half dozen of the fruits and invited them to join us at our campfire to cook their catch. They'd reeled in a bass nearly twice the size of our fish. I wished I'd been so lucky. Holy smokes! You caught yourself a piranha! Noah whistled in admiration. Florida's eyes shot open so wide I thought they'd pop from her head. Piranha? You mean the fish that eats people? In this case, it looks like it's going to be the people eating the fish, smiled Noah. It turns out this particular piranha had more to worry about than you did. Only the red-bellied ones are dangerous. Our fish didn't have a speck of red on it. I wish I'd known that before I reeled it in. Noah sliced open both fish and cleaned out the guts. We cooked and shared the piranha and the bass, 50-50. They tasted delicious. Maybe because they actually were, or maybe because I was so hungry. Florida thought the piranha was so tasty, she planned to ask the SureSave to start carrying it at the fish counter. Kevin scraped a sharp rock along the brown scales of the aguaje, stripping the hard skin from the fruit. Inside, it glistened buttery yellow. It was gooey in the center with a cluster of 3 fat seeds. We all took bites and agreed it tasted like carrots. I do hope this little fruit gets busy working its beauty magic on me. Heaven knows I could use it about now, Florida said as she ran her fingers through her hair. Then she surprised me. She laughed. Oh, for heaven's sake. At this point, I must resemble a complete and utter freak show. No makeup, no hairdo. And look at these nasty nails. She presented her hands for inspection, caked with dirt, broken down to the quick, and barely a spot of polish left on them. I can't believe I'm saying this, but thank goodness I don't have a mirror. That's progress, I thought. The Amazon may have shown her another world, but deep inside, I suspected Florida was still Florida. She ate twice as many aguaje fruits as anyone else. Wolf Adams presented Jenna and her dad with a hot fudge sundae that looked big enough for all 4 teams to share, but they didn't offer anyone a single bite. She and her dad dug in. Jenna made all kinds of happy, slurpy noises, probably just to rub it in our faces. Let little Miss Nasty have her chocolate sundae, Florida said loud enough for all to hear. It will surely cause her pretty complexion to break out in pimples, and it will make her fat. Then she turned and winked at the camera. Jenna glared at Florida. After that, she only picked at her sundae. Eventually, it melted into a giant, milky soup. Chapter 37. I heard the scream not long after Florida, and I crawled into our hammocks for a midday rest. Snake! Jenna stood paralyzed at the base of the tree that separated her campsite from ours. Her face was smeared with chocolate sauce. She stared dumbstruck into the branches. Peering right back at her was the longest snake I'd ever seen in my entire life. Way bigger than that rattler in Truth or Consequences. Its forked tongue flicked in and out of its open mouth. It had fangs 4 times the size of piranha teeth. Oh my goodness, gasped Florida. Somebody do something! The camera crew was filming Victor and Carmen on the far side of the camp, and everyone else was over there watching. The loudmouthed howler monkeys drowned out our yells for help. I quivered with fear, but I knew what I had to do. Back up slowly, Jenna, I said as I slid from my hammock. The snake slithered toward her. They were nearly nose to nose, the snake's flicking tongue practically licking the chocolate sauce from Jenna's cheek. I seized our machete and quietly inched forward, trying not to crunch the leaves under my feet. The snake chose that moment to strike. It flew from the tree, slamming down on Jenna's right shoulder. Its weight pulled her hard to the ground. Jenna screamed, but the sound only blended into the howler monkey's cries, already filling the rainforest. I lifted my machete. The snake's mouth gaped wide, its poisonous fangs ready for the kill. With every ounce of strength, I crashed the sharp blade down on the snake's head, slicing it clean off with a single chop. I'd missed Jenna's shoulder by less than an inch. Perhaps it was the shock of seeing a kid kill a snake, but the monkeys immediately hushed. The rainforest was dead silent. I started to cry, and I'm not even sure why. Maybe it was because it was the most scared I'd ever been, next to when my mom died. Maybe it was because the whole snake incident reminded me of Rosalie Clare, and I wished she'd been here to protect me. Maybe it was because I was only 11 and way too young to have just chopped up a giant snake all by myself. I turned away because I didn't want Jenna to see me crying, but she did. "What are you bawling for?" Jenna snapped as she scrambled to her feet, pulling dead leaves from her hair. "I was the one who almost got killed." I couldn't answer. All my words had flown away. Well, at least they didn't get any of that on camera. The last thing I need is to have people see you trying to save me. Trying to save you? You horrid little monster. Florida was hopping mad. She did save you. And you should be down on your bony little knees kissing the toes of Madison's sneakers. Wow, go Florida. I'm not one for telling people off, but Jenna sure had it coming. You might think at that very moment I was sorry I'd saved her, but I wasn't. Not one bit. I don't care how much you dislike someone. It's wrong to wish for something super bad to happen to them. And the best thing, it felt really good to have my grandmother stand up for me. Florida's yelling brought everyone running. When Jenna's dad showed up, she instantly transformed into a damsel in distress. She dashed into his waiting arms. Wolf Adam sauntered over, letting out a low, drawn-out whistle. "Now that's impressive," he said. He inspected the snake's impossibly long body. It was a deep walnut brown, patterned with coffee-colored diamonds. Heel to toe, he paced it off with his jungle boots. "Would you look at that? We've got ourselves an 8-foot-long fer-de-lance, the deadliest snake in the Amazon." What in the devil's name happened? Florida stepped forward. "I saw it all, but my lips are sealed until you turn on those cameras." 2 cameras clicked on, and she reported everything, even the part about Jenna being ungrateful. Jenna's eyes narrowed. She wiped the chocolate from her face and marched right up to Florida, shoving her out of the way. Then she faced the camera. "That poor snake was minding its own business when Madison waved her machete at it. That's the reason it attacked. And you know why? She wanted to make it attack me so I'd have to leave the show. She's afraid I'll win." Then she turned to me and said, "FYI, Madison McGee, you should be afraid. Very afraid." She flounced off into the jungle with her dad trotting at her heels. Wow. She she's a bad one.
Geez, so Madison just saves Jenna from being killed by the deadliest snake in the Amazon jungle, and Jenna lies about it? What do you think is going on with her? Kind of weird, right? So the character of Jenna was actually inspired by a very pretty and extremely competitive girl I once knew, who also had a hard time telling the truth, which is another case of taking something or someone I know and turning them into fiction. Okay, well, at least now Florida is sticking up for Madison. And that moment when everything started to change between Madison and Florida is when Florida was finally able to tell her the truth when they were at their fishing spot. So not only does she admit why she didn't like Rosalie Clare and Grandma Daisy, but she also admits that Angela must have been a pretty wonderful mom to Madison. You know, there's an old saying that goes, the truth will set you free. And this is one of those moments where Florida finally admits a really hard truth she's been carrying around with her for so many years. And once she finally lets it out and admits that she's made some big mistakes, she's a little bit lighter and a little bit freer. Now we're getting pretty close to the end of the story, and you've been listening for quite a while, which reminds me of a question I get asked a lot when I do author visits at schools. How long did it take me to write this book? A very long time. A really long time. It took about a year, which included having close friends and eventually my editor in New York read it and give me feedback, which I love, because when you spend so much time on a writing project, it's important to have other people read it and let you know if you're missing anything or if you've included too much, if they want to know more or less. I know for some people that feedback can be hard. When I was a kid, I found it to be difficult, but now I love it because I want my stories to be as good as they can be. You know, I wrote so many drafts that I lost count, and I can guarantee you that my first draft, or anyone's first draft, is never their best. Second is never your best. Your third is never your best. And I also read my work out loud over and over and over again, because that's a great way to hear the flow of my sentences and catch mistakes and all of that. And that's something you guys can do as well with your own writing. And along the way, some of what seemed like zillions of drafts, I had some big changes and others were small ones. My goal in the end was to have a tight, entertaining story that kind of clips along and does not have any holes in it. So what does that mean, a hole in a story? Okay, so what if I'd introduced Leroy to you and then I just forgot to mention him again and didn't wrap up his story? That would be considered a hole, and that would be pretty disappointing, right? Okay, now that Miss Josephine is about to read the last few chapters, let's see just why Jenna told Madison that she should be very afraid.